My wife told me she only married me because I reminded her of her dead ex-boyfriend. She said it during our worst fight, 3 years into what I thought was a happy marriage. We were standing in our kitchen arguing about money when suddenly Natalie's face crumpled and the words spilled out like poison she'd been holding back. I never loved you, David. You just looked like him. You reminded me of Kyle. The silence that followed felt like falling into a grave. I stared at her across our granite countertop, trying to process what she'd just admitted. Kyle, the name she'd mentioned maybe 5 times in 3 years, always with tears in her eyes, always followed by, he died in a car accident before we could get married. I'd been sympathetic, supportive, understanding about her grief. I thought I was helping her heal. What do you mean I reminded you of him? My voice came out hollow, like it belonged to someone else. Natalie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and walked to our bedroom. She returned with a shoebox I'd never seen before, hands shaking as she pulled out photographs. The man staring back at me had my face, not similar features, not a general resemblance. My exact face, down to the scar above my left eyebrow from a childhood fall. Same dark hair, same jawline, same brown eyes. We could have been identical twins separated at birth. The photos showed Kyle laughing, kissing Natalie, wearing clothes that could have been pulled from my own closet. How is this possible? I whispered, holding a picture of Kyle at what looked like the same coffee shop where Natalie and I had our first date. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. I saw you at that bookstore and I couldn't breathe. You looked exactly like him. I followed you for 3 blocks. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Our meet cute wasn't cute at all. She'd stalked me because I resembled a dead man. Our first conversation, our first kiss, our wedding day, all of it built on her desperate need to resurrect someone who was gone forever. I was a living memorial to Kyle Thompson. So our entire relationship is what exactly? I asked, my hands shaking as I set down the photographs. A grief experiment? 3 years of you pretending I'm someone else? Natalie reached for me, but I stepped backward. The woman I'd married was a stranger who'd been using me as a replacement part for her broken heart. She tried to explain through her tears how she'd planned to tell me eventually, once she'd processed her grief properly, how she did care about me, even if it started for the wrong reasons. But every word made it worse. I wasn't David Mitchell to her. I was Kyle Thompson with a different name and social security number. I spent that night in our guest room, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of our relationship through this new lens. The way she'd sometimes call me by the wrong name during sex, quickly correcting herself. Her insistence on certain restaurants and activities that seemed random, but now made perfect sense. She'd been recreating her life with Kyle, using me as a stand-in. The strange phone calls started making sense too. Natalie would get calls at odd hours and step outside to talk, always returning emotional and distant. When I'd asked about them, she'd claimed they were grief counselors or old friends checking on her. Now I wondered who was really on the other end of those calls. The next morning, I started going through our financial records while Natalie was at work. I needed to understand the scope of her deception, to see how deep this obsession went. What I found in our bank statements made my stomach turn. Monthly payments of $200 to something called Healing Hearts Support Services, going back to before we even met. But that wasn't all. There were other suspicious payments. A private investigator named Robert Vance had received $500 monthly for 6 months during our first year of dating. When I called his office, his secretary confirmed they'd provided background research and surveillance services for a female client matching Natalie's description. I called the number listed on the bank statements for Healing Hearts. A cheerful woman answered, "Healing Hearts, this is Margaret speaking." When I asked about Natalie's payments, Margaret's voice became cautious. Full story on my channel and linked below.